Welcome to the Deep Dive. Today, we're diving headfirst into a moment that fundamentally changed life on Earth. The end of the age of dinosaurs.
It's almost mind-boggling to consider the sheer expanse of time we're talking about, isn't it? For you, imagine a planet so different, with lush tropical environments stretching, well, pretty much all the way to the Arctic.
Right, yeah.
Continents were joined in ways we barely recognize today, and these colossal creatures ruled the land for hundreds of millions of years, a stretch of time that it dwarfs human history.
Absolutely. And then around 66 million years ago, as you've been exploring in your research, the Cretaceous-Paleogene extinction event, or the KPG extinction as it's often called, hit like a reset button. It was a period of incredibly rapid and widespread loss of life.
Yeah, to really grasp the scale for you, picture a world where roughly 1 out of every 5 living species simply vanished. That included about 16% of all marine families and 18% of land vertebrate families. So imagine a biological world suddenly stripped bare. It's like.
And while other extinction events in Earth's deep history might have seen even higher percentages of total species lost, the KPG event had this particularly dramatic and, well, lasting impact on land ecosystems. Here's where it gets really interesting for you. After this point, no land animal weighing more than about 50 pounds survived. Think about that for a moment. For millions of years afterward, life on land essentially downsized. It was a complete return to smaller forms.
And it wasn't just the sheer number of extinctions, it was the loss of an entire ecological order. The ecosystems did eventually recover, geologically speaking, in a relatively short time frame. But they did so without the iconic dinosaurs that had dominated for so long.
Right.
No more Tyrannosaurus rex, no swift velociraptors, no towering Brachiosaurus. The great marine reptiles like plesiosaurs were also gone from the seas, you might imagine.
Though, as you've no doubt come across in your reading, it's worth remembering that technically, dinosaurs are still with us today in the form of birds, which evolved from feathered dinosaurs. And, well, crocodiles are also relatively close relatives.
That's a very good point, yeah.
But those colossal land giants, they disappeared. And the story of how scientists even pieced together this ancient catastrophe is a fascinating detective story in itself, as you know.
It truly is a remarkable tale of scientific discovery. It really begins in the late 18th century with Georges Cuvier, who put forward this revolutionary idea for you to consider that species could actually go extinct.
Yeah, which seems obvious now, but wasn't then.
Exactly. Before him, the prevailing thought was that all of life was static, divinely created and unchanging.
What's fascinating here, and perhaps something you've reflected on, is that Cuvier's initial thinking was tied to catastrophes, specifically the idea of a great flood. He wasn't working within the framework of evolutionary theory as we understand it today.
Right.
He envisioned Earth's history as like a series of divine creations followed by these divinely orchestrated disasters.
Exactly. While his specific worldview eventually gave way to the understanding of evolution, particularly after Darwin's On the Origin of Species in 1859, which provided the mechanism of natural selection. Well, that explained the changes we see in the fossil record. Cuvier's fundamental concept of sudden extinctions remained a crucial piece of the puzzle.
And for a long time, the scientific pendulum, as you might recall from your sources, swung towards more gradual explanations for the dinosaurs' demise. It was almost seen as more, scientifically sound to propose a slow decline rather than a sudden cataclysm.
Right, the catastrophism idea fell out of favor for a bit, and numerous theories arose to explain this gradual decline, as you've likely encountered. Ideas like the rise of toxic flowering plants slowly poisoning herbivorous dinosaurs, or the evolution of mammals who supposedly ate all the dinosaur eggs.
Yes, the egg-eating mammals theory.
Yeah, there was a real wealth of these gradual extinction hypotheses floating around.
So for a century or more, the prevailing scientific view, the one you might have first encountered, was that dinosaurs simply lost some kind of evolutionary race or were slowly outcompeted.
Precisely. The idea of a sudden, catastrophic event wiping them out was often met with, quite a bit of skepticism by the scientific community. But that all began to shift in the 1970s with a truly groundbreaking discovery involving a very rare element, iridium.
Ah, yes, the iridium spike. This is where the story for you takes a really dramatic turn. Tell us more about that pivotal moment.
So in 1977, a team led by physicist Luis Alvarez, along with his geologist son Walter Alvarez and chemists Frank Asaro and Helen Michel, were examining rock layers in Italy. These layers marked the KPG boundary, that exact point in time when the dinosaurs disappeared.
Okay.
And within this thin layer of clay, they found something completely unexpected, an extraordinarily high concentration of the element iridium.
Now, for you who might be encountering this for the first time in detail, why was this iridium finding so significant? What's the deal with iridium?
Okay, so the key thing to understand is that iridium is incredibly rare on the Earth's surface. It's mostly down in the core. However, it's much more abundant in asteroids and meteorites.
Oh, right.
The concentration they found in that KPG boundary layer was hundreds of times greater than in the rock layers above and below it. And subsequently, this iridium spike was discovered in KPG boundary layers all over the globe. Think of it like a worldwide fingerprint in the geological record.
So Luis Alvarez and his team proposed this really radical idea, one that I'm sure stood out in your research. A massive asteroid, something like 6 to 10 miles wide, slammed into Earth 66 million years ago.
Exactly. The sheer force of that impact would have vaporized the asteroid and vast amounts of Earth's crust, sending this iridium-rich dust high into the atmosphere, where it then spread globally before settling down, creating that distinctive boundary layer you've read about.
And as you mentioned earlier, this idea wasn't immediately accepted by everyone, was it? Especially the paleontologists who, as you know, had spent their careers studying the fossil record.
That's correct. Paleontologists who were accustomed to thinking in terms of, vast timescales and gradual changes seen in the fossil record were initially very skeptical of this sudden catastrophic explanation. It just didn't fit their framework initially.
Right, it felt maybe too convenient, too sudden.
Perhaps. But then another crucial piece of evidence emerged, something many consider the smoking gun in this ancient mystery for you.
You're talking about the discovery of the Chicxulub crater.
Precisely. In the late 1970s, geophysicists working for Pemex, the Mexican state oil company, identified this massive geological anomaly centered near Chicxulub on the Yucatán Peninsula.
Okay.
It was a huge buried impact structure over 90 miles in diameter, stretching out into the Gulf of Mexico. And the dating of this impact structure placed its formation exactly at the KPG boundary 66 million years ago. So for you, the timing lined up perfectly with the iridium layer.
So this massive crater, perfectly timed with the iridium layer found worldwide, that really solidified the asteroid impact hypothesis as the leading explanation, didn't it?
It did. The Chicxulub crater provided the physical evidence of a catastrophic impact occurring at precisely the right moment in geological history. And since then, further supporting evidence has continued to accumulate, as you've likely seen in your sources, things like shocked quartz.
Shocked quartz?
Yeah, think of it. Quartz grains that show this unique structural damage. It's only caused by immense pressure, like, the kind you get from a massive impact.
Wow.
And tektites, these glassy beads, formed when the asteroid impact melted Earth's rock, which was then ejected high into the atmosphere and cooled into these distinctive shapes as it fell back down.
Right, I've seen pictures of those.
And soot layers found globally, indicating widespread wildfires. All these pieces began to fit together in a compelling way for you.
But it's important to remember, and something our sources emphasize, that the asteroid impact wasn't the entire story, was it? The planet was already under considerable stress, a factor that might have made the impact even more devastating.
That's a crucial point for you to consider, absolutely. The Earth system was already experiencing significant upheavals in the millions of years leading up to the impact. It wasn't a stable, thriving ecosystem that was suddenly blindsided.
Let's delve into that a bit for you. Our sources mentioned a significant drop in global sea levels. How substantial was that? And what kind of impact did it have on the living world?
We're talking about a potentially massive drop, perhaps as much as 600 feet, or nearly 200 meters. For you, imagine coastlines all over the world shifting dramatically, shrinking shallow marine habitats, and putting significant pressure on the marine ecosystems that relied on those areas.
That alone sounds pretty disruptive.
Definitely. And the climate was also unstable at the time, right? Warmer overall, but punctuated by some pretty sharp swings in temperature.
Yes, the average global temperature was significantly warmer than today, maybe around 77 Fahrenheit or 25 Celsius. However, in the few million years before the impact, there were several rapid cooling events, temperature drops of perhaps 18 degrees Fahrenheit or 10 Celsius, followed by periods of warming. This kind of fluctuating climate would have already been a significant stressor for many species, including the dinosaurs. Makes adaptation tricky.
And then there's the colossal volcanic activity of the Deccan Traps in what's now India. This started quite a while before the asteroid hit, didn't it, as you've probably noted in your research?
That's right. The major phase of the Deccan Traps eruptions began about 500,000 years before the KPG impact. We're talking about immense outpourings of lava, covering hundreds of thousands of square miles in layers thousands of feet thick. It's a scale of volcanic activity almost unimaginable to us today.
Just staggering. And these eruptions weren't just about the lava flows themselves, were they? They had significant consequences for the atmosphere and the environment as a whole, further adding to the planetary stress you mentioned.
Absolutely. These eruptions release staggering amounts of volcanic gases like carbon dioxide, sulfur dioxide, and ash into the atmosphere. This could have led to what's known as a volcanic winter.
Okay, yeah.
Imagine the massive eruptions spewing so much ash and gas that it actually blocked out sunlight for a period, causing a global cooling effect. Additionally, the release of sulfur dioxide would have caused acid rain, and changes in ocean chemistry would have further stressed already fragile ecosystems. So for you, it's a picture of a planet already under duress.
So it really does sound like the asteroid impact wasn't an isolated event happening on a stable planet. It was more like the final devastating blow to a world already reeling from other major environmental shifts.
Exactly. Think of it for you as a planet already weakened and vulnerable, and then it gets hit by this massive knockout punch from space. The existing stresses likely amplified the destructive power of the impact.
Okay, so try to picture this if you can, based on all the sources you've looked at. An object larger than Mount Everest hurtling through space and slamming into the Yucatán Peninsula at incredible speed. What happened in the immediate aftermath of such a colossal impact?
The energy released was almost unimaginable, truly astronomical. Billions of tons of rock were instantly vaporized, creating a superheated plume of debris and dust that shot high into the atmosphere, eventually encircling the globe. For you, envision a blast so powerful it literally alters the planet in an instant.
And the immediate effects on the planet must have been truly apocalyptic, far beyond anything we can easily comprehend.
They were. Massive tsunamis, hundreds of feet high, radiated outwards from the impact zone, crashing into coastlines across the Gulf of Mexico and beyond. Debris ejected into space fell back to Earth, heating the atmosphere to oven-like temperatures, potentially igniting vast global wildfires. Imagine the entire planet ablaze in places.
Oh my God.
The seismic shockwaves would have triggered massive earthquakes and possibly even exacerbated the ongoing volcanic eruptions of the Deccan Traps on the other side of the world.
So a world that was already warm and in some regions tropical was suddenly plunged into scorching heat, followed by prolonged darkness and cold as the dust and soot blocked out the sun. And if that wasn't enough, acid rain would have been falling. It's hard to even fathom that level of devastation for all living things.
It truly was a catastrophic transformation of the planet, from a relatively stable, albeit stressed environment, to a complete hellscape in a very short period. The scale of the environmental disruption was unlike anything seen in millions of years.
Which then leads us to the long-term consequences of this cataclysm. What were the ripple effects that lasted for months and years after the initial impact, shaping the world that came after?
The most significant long-term effect, as you've likely read, was the prolonged impact winter. The massive amounts of dust and soot in the upper atmosphere blocked sunlight for an extended period, months, perhaps even years. This effectively shut down photosynthesis, the fundamental process supporting, well, pretty much the entire food web, both on land and in the oceans.
So, in the oceans, the very base of the food chain phytoplankton died off due to the lack of sunlight, leading to a cascading collapse of marine life all the way up the food web.
Precisely. With the phytoplankton gone, the zooplankton that fed on them starved, then the small fish and invertebrates that ate the zooplankton, and so on up the food chain. This devastated populations of larger marine reptiles like mosasaurs and plesiosaurs, as well as the once abundant ammonites. For you, picture entire marine ecosystems collapsing from the bottom up.
But some marine life did manage to survive this prolonged darkness and the significant changes in ocean chemistry, right? There were some resilient survivors in the seas.
Yes, definitely. Deep water creatures were likely less affected by the lack of sunlight at the surface. Some types of fish, turtles, crocodiles, they're amazing survivors, and certain mollusks managed to persist, highlighting the importance of diverse ecological niches even in the face of global catastrophe.
Now, turning our attention to land ecosystems. Before the impact, our sources describe complex and diverse environments dominated by various types of dinosaurs, large and medium-sized, primarily active during the day. And then you had these smaller, often furry mammals living in the shadows, so to speak, often nocturnal.
That's a good summary of the pre-impact terrestrial world for you. And with the onset of the impact winter, the lack of sunlight caused a widespread die-off of land plants. This had immediate and devastating consequences for the large herbivorous dinosaurs, the sauropods, hadrosaurs, ceratopsians. Their primary food source essentially vanished.
Which in turn inevitably led to the starvation of the large carnivorous dinosaurs, like the Tyrannosaurus rex, that preyed on those now starving herbivores. It was a classic domino effect playing out on a massive scale.
Exactly. But here's where the survival advantages of the smaller mammals and birds, the avian dinosaurs, become clear for you. Their small size meant they required significantly less food to survive. Many mammals were nocturnal or lived in burrows, offering some protection from the immediate aftermath of the impact, the heat, maybe the falling debris.
Right, that makes sense.
And many early mammals likely had more flexible diets, perhaps eating insects, seeds, or decaying matter, whatever they could find. Birds, with their ability to fly, could potentially find refuge in different environments and had diverse diets of seeds and insects too.
So while many mammal and bird species also went extinct during this period, our sources mention estimates of around 90% extinction, even for them, crucially. Enough survived to carry on and eventually repopulate the drastically changed world.
Correct. They weren't as directly reliant on that large plant herbivore-carnivore food chain that collapsed with the disappearance of sunlight.
Yeah.
Their adaptability and smaller resource needs were key to their survival.
And then, as the dust finally settled and sunlight gradually returned to the planet, what kind of world was left? It must have been a very different landscape.
Oh, absolutely. It was a colder, emptier world, with many ecological niches now vacant. The dominant forms of life were gone, creating an unprecedented opportunity for the survivors. The stage was set for a new act in the long drama of life on Earth.
And this is where we see the rapid diversification of those key surviving groups that you've researched. Bony fishes in the oceans, filling the void left by the large marine reptiles, birds taking to the skies in incredible variety, evolving into the over 10,000 species we see today.
Amazing variety.
And mammals beginning their remarkable ascent to dominance on land, stepping out of the shadows of the dinosaurs.
Precisely. Bony fishes became the dominant group in the oceans. Birds radiated into an astonishing array of forms and ecological roles. And mammals, finally freed from the competitive pressure of the dinosaurs, rapidly diversified, growing larger, occupying those empty niches, and ultimately leading to the world we know today, including, eventually, us.
And this all happened on a relatively short geological timescale, just a few 100,000 years, for the beginning of what we call the Age of Mammals. It's quite a remarkable and rapid transformation in the grand scheme of Earth's history.
It truly is. The KPG extinction was this complex cascade of events: the pre-existing climate change and sea level shifts, the massive volcanic activity of the Deccan Traps creating instability in the Earth system, and then the asteroid impact delivering that final devastating blow. A perfect storm of extinction, really, that ultimately paved the way for a new era of life.
And it stands as a powerful reminder for you of the interconnectedness of all life on our planet and the vulnerability of even the most dominant species to sudden and dramatic global catastrophes.
Absolutely. It underscores the fragility of ecosystems and the potential for rapid and profound change on a planetary scale, driven by both internal Earth processes and external events from space.
So, as we conclude this deep dive into the cataclysmic end of the dinosaur age, it's clear, based on the wealth of information you've explored, that this wasn't a simple story of just a giant rock from space wiping out the giants. It was a much more intricate interplay of long-term environmental changes, culminating in a sudden, catastrophic event.
Indeed. It was a confluence of factors that ultimately reshaped the trajectory of life on Earth, leading to the world we inhabit today.
A truly fascinating, if sobering, look at our planet's long and dynamic history. Thank you for guiding us through this incredible period. It's been incredibly insightful.
My pleasure. It's a story that continues to yield new discoveries and deepen our understanding of life's remarkable resilience and, well, its inherent fragility too.
And for you, our listener, consider this. The KPG extinction wasn't just an ending, it was also a profound beginning. A pivotal moment that, against all odds, paved the way for the world we know today, including the rise of mammals and ultimately us. What other hidden stories of resilience and transformation might be buried within Earth's long and complex history, just waiting to be uncovered? We encourage you to continue exploring this fascinating topic and to really think about the implications of such dramatic events for the future of our planet and the life it supports.